Welcome back. We're talking about types of total participation techniques and ways that you can engage students in your classrooms. We just completed in the last section on the spot TPTs. Those are engagement strategies that the teacher has to have very little preparation for. They can pull them out of the hat and use them as quickly as they want, as often as they want, with very little preparation. We're now going to move and talk about holdups. Those are TPTs that we can prepare in advance and then call on them when we need to. Also then, our next section will be on movement and TPTs. So let's talk about holdups. Holdups are interaction-based activities that use response cards that we create or have students create in order to respond to questions or prompts. During these activities, students interactively reflect on a question or prompt and then hold up a card, paper, or whiteboard in response. Studies have indicated that response cards are useful in improving participation and on-task behavior. An added benefit in response cards is that teachers are provided more feedback on responses instead of traditional hand raising. It's an excellent strategy for a quick, formative assessment. So we covered some of these in our last section of on-demand or on-the-spot TPTs because they cross-section. You can use number cards. So for in our elementary schools, we might have a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on index cards, one number per card. Then when you're doing math problems, they could hold up the card that is the correct response. We also talked about true and not true, multiple choice cards, or using your whiteboard or chalkboard splash as a holdup. So those are some of the ones that you can have prepared in advance in order to ascertain a student's knowledge. Another type of holdup would be a quick draw. This would combine the chalkboard splash with the holdup and have students do a quick draw about what they learned. That again hits on the student that would prefer to draw or illustrate their response rather than provide a specific answer. Another TPT holdup that you could use in order to know when your students are ready to move on is called a holdup that on one side it says still thinking and on the other side it says ready to share. That way you can know as you're using your proximity how many students are ready to move on and how much more time you need to allow. So how do you use TPT holdups? Step number 1 is to create them. Think in advance the kind of TPT holdups that would best suit the needs of your class depending on the grade, the content, and the age. Cards can be created on index cards, different colored pieces of paper or cardstock. They can be labeled with answer choices such as A, B, C, D, or color-coded, or you could use green for yes and red for no. If teachers would put the sets of cards in an envelope or punch a hole in the top of the left-hand corner of each card set, or attach the cards to rings, it makes it very easy for the students to access and use. Step number 2 is ask. In the TPT pattern, teachers pose a question to the class regarding information just covered in the lesson, and then have the students hold up the corresponding answer to the question. Step 3 is to assess. So the teacher can perform a quick scan across the classroom to see each student's answer. This gives educators an idea about who has the grasp of the information as presented and who does not. Step 4, when does a teacher use TPT? Using student response cards at any time during the lesson to check for understanding is appropriate. Some examples: you might use them periodically throughout for input during direct instruction to keep the students engaged. You might use it during independent practice to gauge their understanding. You might use them when playing a review game where students answer questions. You might use them at the beginning of a lesson to activate their prior knowledge, or at the end of a lesson to check for overall understanding of the important concepts that were covered. Some variations you can think about on TPT holdups. As alternatives to cards, you could also use paper with answer choices or a template, or you might use popsicle sticks instead of index cards. So you'd have popsicle sticks with the same information, but they're much easier to store and for some of the smaller kids to handle. The pinch or clip cards, instead of having 4 separate cards, one that says A, one that says B, you might have one piece of paper that says A, B, C, and D, and the student would simply cover the letter with their thumb or their forefinger, placing their finger on the answer that they believe is the correct one. So those are some different ideas on how to use TPT holdups in the classroom. I'd like you to pause at this time, and I want you to think about how might you develop, create, and implement holdups to improve engagement in your classroom. Thank you.